little Johnny's in class, and the teacher asks him to tell a story with a moral in it. So little Johnny thinks about it. He's like, all right, I got one. So there's this fly going over this lake. But what the fly doesn't know is that there's this bass that's swimming around, and he's thinking, if that fly goes down 6 inches, I can jump out of the water and get lunch. Well, what the bass doesn't know is that there's a bear that's looking at that bass, is thinking, if that bass jumps out of the water, I can grab the bass and I can have my lunch. Well, what the bear doesn't know is that there's a man hiding behind the bushes, that as soon as that bear goes to grab the fish, he's going to shoot the bear. Well, what the hunter doesn't know, that as soon as that man goes to shoot that bear who's going after the fish, it's going after the fly, that there is a mouse that is going to go after the cheese. It's going to fall out of the man's pocket. Well, what the mouse doesn't know is that behind another bush is a cat, that as soon as that mouse goes after the cheese, he's going to jump over the bush and grab the mouse. And so everybody's going to get fed. The teacher says, okay, so what happened? He says, well, what happened was the fly went down, the bass went up, the bear went after the bass, the man shoots the bear, the cheese falls, the mouse gets the cheese, the cat overjumps and falls in the water and gets soaking wet. She says, that's great. She says, but what's the moral? He says, well, Teach, the moral of the story is every time a fly goes down 6 inches, the pussy is bound.
Hey, John, want to hear a joke?
Yep.
So little Johnny grew up and he became a trucker. And he was driving along on his trucking route, and he stopped into this old tavern and walks in and looks up on the back bar, and there's this sign, and it says, cheeseburgers $1.50, chicken sandwiches $2.50, and hand jobs $1,000. So he walks on up to the bar, and there's a beautiful bartender behind there, and he kind of whispers to her. He says, say, are you the lady that does the hand jobs? And she smiles and says, well, yes, I am. Well, Johnny says, good. Wash your fucking hands. I want a cheeseburger. Hey, Dad, want to hear a joke?
Yep.
So little Suzie comes home and she says, Mom, little Johnny showed me his pecker today. And she said, what? I said, yeah, it reminded me of a peanut. She goes, oh, because it was so small? She said, no, it was so salty. Teacher says, okay, class, today we're going to play a guessing game. I'm going to hide some objects underneath the desk, and you're going to have to guess what they are. She says, the first item is round, shaped like a ball. It's orange, kind of hard, kind of soft. Little Johnny raises his hand. He says, ooh, ooh. She says, little Suzie. Little Suzie says, an orange. She says, no, it's a grapefruit, but I like the way you're thinking. She said, the second item is smaller. It's kind of spherical, maybe oval shaped. And it's purple. Little Johnny raises his hand and goes, ooh, ooh, ooh. And she says, little Billy. Little Billy says, a grape. And she says, no, it's a plum, but I like the way you're thinking. At this point, little Johnny's all upset because the teacher won't call on him. He says, all right, teacher, I got something underneath my desk. It's long, spherical, and girls love to put their lips on it. Teacher says, oh my gosh, you go to the principal's office. He said, what for? It's just a bottle of Dr. Pepper, but I like the way you're thinking. Hey guys, want to hear a joke?
Yep.
All right, little Suzie comes home and she says, Dad, little Johnny said something to me that I don't understand. He said, well, what did he say? Well, he told me that I had the most beautiful chassis. I had an amazing set of airbags and the most fantastic bumper. Well, what does that mean? Her dad got all mad and says, you don't need to know what that means, but what you need to do is go back to little Johnny and tell him that if he ever decides that he's going to lift up your hood and check your oil with his dipstick, that I'm going to tighten his nuts so hard that his headlights are going to pop off and that he's going to be leaking fluid from his exhaust pipe. That's so freaking bad.
That's good.
Hey, Dad,
Yeah, bud.
I think you're going to be really angry about this one.
What happened this time?
I got an F in math.
Dude, we've been practicing math all week. What happened?
Well, we were multiplying our numbers, and the teacher said, Dami, what's 3 times 2? And I said, Teach, that's easy. It's 6. And then the teacher says, oh yeah, then what's 2 times 3?
What the hell's the difference?
Yeah, that's what I told her.
You did not. Mama's gonna be so mad.
One day, little Johnny comes home from work, and little Susie's in the kitchen, and he says, little Suzie, I got to tell you something. She says, what is it? What is it? He says, well, I've got this strong urge to stick my pecker in the pickle slicer at work. She says, oh my gosh. She goes, you're going to have to see a counselor or something. He says, no. I think I can resist the urge to do it. She says, okay, well, I hope so. Well, a couple of weeks go by, little Johnny comes home and grabs a beer. He sits down at the kitchen table and he downs the whole thing. Little Susie says, what's going on? What's wrong? He says, well, remember a couple weeks ago when I told you that I wanted to put my pecker in the pickle slicer? She said, yeah. He says, well, I did it. She says, oh my gosh, what happened? He says, well, I got fired. She goes, oh, okay, well, what happened to the pickle slicer? He said, well, I'm pretty sure that she got fired too.
Dad.
Yeah, bud.
Well, today I made my teacher laugh at school.
How'd that happen?
Well, she said, today we were going to be discussing algebra. And she asked me, Anthony, what does algebra remind you of? And I said, well, it reminds me of my past relationships. And she said, how? And I said, well, have you ever looked at your ex and wondered why?
Well, you weren't lying. So bad. When little Johnny was in college, he was a bartender. And one evening, a panda comes in, sits down. Little Johnny starts serving them. And before you know it, the panda is getting sloppy drunk. He says, little Johnny, do you know any women that are looking to get lucky around here? Little Johnny looks around. He says, yeah, there's one right over there. So he waves her over. And she sits down. They get to talking. He's buying her drinks. And the next thing you know, she's inviting him over to her apartment. Or they have more drinks. And one thing leads to another, and they end up having the best sex that both of them have ever had. Well, as soon as they're done, the panda gets cleaned up and takes off and goes back home. Well, about noon the next day, that woman is livid, and she's pounding on that panda's apartment door, and he opens the door, and she says, you gotta pay me. He says, pay you for what? She says, I'm a prostitute. He says, okay, what's that mean? She hands him a dictionary. She says, look it up. It says prostitute. Someone that gets paid for sexual services. He says, I don't have to pay you. I'm a panda. She says, what's that mean? He says, look it up in the dictionary. So she looks it up. It says panda. Cuddly little bear from Australia that eats shoots and leaves. One night, little Susie's parents were sitting on the couch watching a movie. And her dad had these peanuts, and he's throwing them up in the air and catching them in his mouth. Throwing them up in the air and catching them in his mouth. Well, then little Suzie and little Johnny walked through the door, and he turned his head as he was throwing one up in the air, and the peanut landed right in his ear. And he's digging in there trying to get it out. He doesn't know what to do, and little Johnny sees this. He says, all right, I got an idea. He says, it's not normal. He says, but you got to trust me on this. I had kicks stuck in my ear one time, and my dad did this to me, and it got him right out. He's like, all right, I'll try it. Little Johnny comes over there and he shoves his 2 fingers right up his nose. He says, all right, now take in a big, big breath and blow as hard as you can. So her dad takes in this big breath and he blows and the peanut just pops right out of his ear. Well, little Johnny and little Suzie went off to the bedroom and went to go watch a movie. And her mom says, wow, that was amazing. I wonder what he plans on being when he grows up. And her dad says, well, judging by the smell of his fingers, I think he plans on being our son-in-law.